You're at the pump, watching the numbers climb. You've heard it for years. America is pumping 13 million barrels of crude oil per day, more than any country in history. We're the world's top producer. We're energy independent. So why does a war 7,000 miles away, or a hurricane in the Gulf, or a cyber attack on a single pipeline still make filling your tank feel like a financial wound? This is the fundamental disconnect. We produce the energy, but we don't control the price. This is the energy historian, uncovering the hidden systems that power civilization. Think of American oil production as a massive, roaring fountain. It gushes millions of barrels a day from the shale fields of Texas and North Dakota. That's the engine. But the price you pay isn't set at the fountainhead. It's set in a labyrinth, a global maze of pipelines, tankers, refineries, and trading floors where geography, politics, and decades-old industrial decisions collide. We built the world's most powerful engine, but we neglected the transmission. And when a gear strips in the labyrinth, everyone feels the shudder, no matter how hard the fountain is gushing. Let's start with a simple, brutal fact. In 1981, the United States had 324 refineries. Today, we have 135. We didn't close nearly 200 of them because we stopped using gasoline. We closed them because of a cold economic logic. It became cheaper for a time to import refined gasoline from abroad than to build and maintain complex, expensive refineries at home. We optimized for marginal cost, not for resilience. That decision now haunts us like a ghost in the machine, because refining capacity is a bottleneck. It's a specific physical gear in the transmission, and today, those remaining 135 refineries, many of them 40 or 50 years old, are running at over 90% capacity just to meet domestic demand. There is no slack, no buffer. So when a fire shuts down a key unit in Whiting, Indiana, or a deep freeze knocks out plants in Port Arthur, Texas, the system can't compensate. The fountain of crude keeps flowing, but there's suddenly nowhere to turn it into usable fuel. The immediate result is a regional price spike. But here's where the labyrinth takes over, because the United States, while a massive producer, is also a massive participant in the global market. We export crude oil. We import refined products. We are not an island. We are a central hub in a global network. This brings us to the first hidden mechanism, the benchmark price. You've heard of West Texas Intermediate, or WTI. That's the price of a barrel of American crude in Cushing, Oklahoma. But there's another, more powerful benchmark called Brent crude, named after a North Sea oil field. Brent is the global price. It's what traders in London, Singapore, and New York use to price roughly two-thirds of the world's internationally traded oil. And what sets the price of Brent? Geopolitical risk, the WTI to rate, supply disruptions anywhere that feeds into the Atlantic Basin, the North Sea, West Africa, and, critically, the Middle East. So, when tensions flare in the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil flows, the price of Brent jumps. When Russia, a major supplier to Europe, invades Ukraine, Brent skyrockets. And because the global market is interconnected, that higher Brent price pulls the price of our domestic WTI crude up with it. It doesn't matter that the oil in your local gas station's tank came from a Texas field. Its price was set in a reaction to a war on another continent. The fountain is local. The price is global. Now, let's add another layer. The export decision. Before the shale revolution, the US had a decades-old ban on exporting crude oil. The idea was to keep our cheap oil at home. But when shale technology unlocked those 13 million barrels a day, the ban was lifted in 2015. This was framed as an economic victory. And it was, for oil producers. They could now sell their crude to the highest global bidder. If the price is better in Europe or Asia, that Texas crude gets pumped into a tanker and sails away. This creates a direct link between your pump price and global events. A refinery in Rotterdam is competing with a refinery in Baton Rouge for the same barrel of Permian Basin crude. If a storm disrupts production in the Gulf, or if Asian demand surges, that American crude is bid upward on the global market. The refinery in Baton Rouge must now pay that higher global price, or it won't get the oil. The energy independence we achieved was in production volume, not in price insulation. We are independent in molecules but utterly dependent on the global market's mood. The infrastructure itself tells a story of unintended consequences. Look at the map of US pipelines. They are a legacy system, built for a different era. Vast networks run from the Gulf Coast up to the Midwest and Northeast, but the epicenter of new production is in the Permian Basin of West Texas and New Mexico. The pipelines out of there are often maxed out. When they are, producers have to use more expensive methods like trucks or rail to move the oil. That adds cost. More critically, the refining capacity isn't always in the right place for the right kind of oil. Shale oil is typically light and sweet, but many of our oldest refineries, especially along the Gulf Coast, were built decades ago to process heavy and sour crude from places like Venezuela and the Middle East. They've been retooled, but the match isn't perfect. This creates surreal inefficiencies. Sometimes, we export light shale oil to other countries, while simultaneously importing heavier crude that our complex refineries are better suited to handle. It's a dance of molecules across oceans, all adding transaction costs and vulnerabilities. Let's make this concrete with a crisis. May 2021. The Colonial Pipeline. This single pipeline, just 3 feet in diameter, carries nearly half the gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel for the entire East Coast, from Houston to New York. A ransomware attack forced it to shut down for 6 days. Not 6 months, 6 days. There was no shortage of crude oil. The fountain was gushing, but the labyrinth was clamped shut. The result was immediate panic. Gas stations from Atlanta to Washington, D.C. ran dry. Prices spiked. The National Guard was put on standby, all because one piece of private infrastructure, a single gear in the transmission, stopped turning. That event revealed the fragility beneath the production numbers. We have a just-in-time energy delivery system with no just-in-case buffer. Our strategic petroleum reserve is crude oil, not gasoline. It's a backup for the fountain, not for the pipeline. When the transmission fails, the reserve can't help you at the pump for weeks. Dimmer. Now, layer on geography. California is the classic example. It's a fuel island. Its strict environmental regulations require a special, cleaner blend of gasoline. Only a handful of refineries, both in-state and on the West Coast, can make it. There are no major pipelines bringing gasoline from the rest of the country. So when a refinery in Torrance has an unplanned outage, California's prices instantly detach from the national average, often leaping $1 or more per gallon. The state produces oil, but it is held hostage by its own specific refining bottleneck. This isn't a global market story. It's an infrastructure story. The labyrinth has dead ends. So, we have a system where production is decentralized and booming, but refining and distribution are centralized and brittle, where prices are set globally, but pain is felt locally, where decades of optimizing for cheap marginal cost have left us vulnerable to any single point of failure. The real question isn't, why do foreign wars change our bills? It's deeper. Why did we build a system where that is an inevitable outcome? The answer lies in a series of choices, each rational in its moment. The choice to let refineries close in the 80s and 90s because imported fuel was cheap. The choice to lift the export ban to boost the shale industry. The choice to prioritize shareholder returns over building redundant pipeline capacity. The choice to rely on market mechanisms to allocate a physical commodity that entire societies depend upon to function. We wanted the benefits of a global market flexibility, efficiency, higher prices for producers, but we ignored the systemic risks. The fever chart of your gasoline price, then, is not just a meter of supply and demand. It is a real-time readout of stress in the global labyrinth. It measures the tension in the Strait of Hormuz. It registers the capacity of a pipeline in Oklahoma. It calculates the downtime of a catalytic cracker in Louisiana. It is a living document of interconnected fragility. We mastered the art of pulling hydrocarbons from the earth. but we failed to master the system that delivers their energy to our lives. We built a formidable fountain, but we neglected the plumbing. And until we grapple with that distinction between producing a resource and controlling the system that gives it value and access, we will remain forever surprised when a shock on the other side of the world echoes in our wallets. The lesson is structural. Resilience is not a byproduct of abundance. It is a separate and more difficult engineering challenge entirely. If this reframed how you see the price at the pump, you're thinking like an energy historian. Hit subscribe. Let me know in the comments, what piece of energy infrastructure do you think is the most critical, yet most invisible, in your daily life?